probably only the biggest fans of The Lion King have ever heard of him. He was Simba's firstborn son, the heir to the throne, and then he vanished. Copa only appeared once, in a forgotten book series published after The Lion King. But his story shook fans, because if he existed, then everything we know about the Lion Guard changes. So what if Simba's lost son met the Lion Guard? Would the Pride Lands be stronger, or would the royal family be torn apart forever? Before we can imagine that meeting, we need to know who Copa really is. Copa isn't from the films. He never appeared in The Lion King, Simba's Pride, or The Lion Guard. Instead, he comes from a 1994 spin-off book collection called The Lion King 6 New Adventures. These books were officially licensed by Disney, illustrated by actual Disney artists, and aimed at younger fans who wanted to see more of Simba's reign. In these stories, Copa is the son of Simba and Nala, the next king in line. He's playful, adventurous, and a little reckless, more like young Simba than the cautious king his father grew into. He spends time with Rafiki, who becomes his mentor and learns lessons about responsibility and leadership. But one book in particular, A Tale of Two Brothers, introduced a dark twist. In some interpretations, Zira, who later appears in Simba's Pride as Scar's most loyal follower, betrays the royal family by attacking Copa. The books themselves never explicitly show his death, but his disappearance from every other piece of Lion King media made fans ask, did Zira kill Simba's heir? Disney has never confirmed Copa as canon. In fact, by the time Simba's Pride released in 1998, the heir to Simba's throne was rewritten as Kiara, not Copa. And The Lion Guard, released in 2016, gave Simba another son, Kion, leader of the guard, but still no mention of Copa. So here's the truth. Copa exists only in those books. Officially licensed but not canon to the films or TV shows, still, his presence lingers like a ghost haunting the Pride Lands. Fans debate his fate, create theories of his survival, and ask the same question we're exploring today. What if Simba's forgotten son lived to meet the Lion Guard? Let's think about it for a moment. 2 heirs to the throne are already too many. So what would happen if there were 3?
Time for the Lion Guard.
To understand how Copa might fit into the story, we need to ground ourselves in what Disney actually gave us. And that begins with The Lion Guard. Released in 2016, The Lion Guard was created as a Disney Junior series aimed at younger audiences, but it took surprising risks in expanding the Lion King universe. It's 100% canon to the films, carefully positioned between The Lion King and Simba's Pride. Although there are also some unexplained inconsistencies, which we have already mentioned on this channel. Anyway, at its center is Kion, Simba and Nala's second-born cub, younger brother to Kiara. While Kiara is raised as the heir to the throne, Kion is given a different destiny. He becomes leader of the Lion Guard, a team chosen to defend the Pride Lands and preserve the Circle of Life. What makes Kion unique is the Roar of the Elders, a mystical power passed down from the great kings of the past. When Kion roars, the voices of ancient lions echo through him, giving his roar the force of a storm. It's a gift, but also a burden. Wielding it responsibly becomes Kion's greatest challenge. Throughout the series, the Lion Guard, made up of Bunga the honey badger, Beshte the hippo, Fuli the cheetah, and Ono the egret, face threats that test both their strength and their values. They battle hyenas, outlanders, even Scar's fiery spirit itself. But their role is not just about fighting and being ordinary warriors, they're guardians of balance, making sure every creature, predator and prey alike, has its place in the Circle of Life. The timeline here matters. The Lion Guard runs parallel to Kiara's journey in Simba's Pride. While she's growing up and slowly moving toward her destiny with Kovu, Kion and the Guard are protecting the kingdom in the background. The show ends by seamlessly tying into the beginning of Simba's Pride, with Kion's journey concluding just as Kiara's takes center stage. And here's the key. In this official canon, Simba and Nala only have 2 cubs, Kiara, the heir, and Kion, the Guard's leader. No mention of Copa, not once. This absence is why the what-if question burns so strongly for fans. If Copa had survived from the books, he would have completely changed this balance. Because suddenly Simba doesn't just have 2 children with separate destinies, he has 3. So, it's time to answer the question, and take a look at how Copa's presence could affect the fate of Kiara, Kion, and the entire Pride Lands. Now comes the heart of the question. If Copa, Simba's book-born heir, really existed alongside Kion and the Lion Guard, what would that look like? First, we need to consider their roles. Copa, as the firstborn son, was always framed as Simba's successor. His destiny, even in the non-canon books, was to inherit the throne one day. Kion, meanwhile, isn't the heir. He's the secondborn. given leadership of the Lion Guard instead. But the Lion Guard isn't just any role. It's a sacred responsibility tied directly to the legacy of the Pride Land's greatest kings. So right away, we'd have two brothers, each carrying the weight of history. One destined to be king, the other chosen by the ancestors to wield a power unlike any ruler before him. The tension practically writes itself. Kopa in the books is curious and impulsive, a little more hot-headed like young Simba. Kion in the series is thoughtful, often cautious, and burdened by the responsibility of the roar. If they grew up together, those differences could either balance or clash. Imagine Kopa urging bold action while Kion pleads for patience, both believing their path is the right one for the Pride Lands. It's easy to picture sibling rivalry. Would Kopa resent Kion's mystical power? Would Kion feel overshadowed by Kopa's birthright as heir? And how would Simba handle that conflict, knowing the cost of fractured brotherhood? After all, he already lived it with Scar. But there's another possibility. Instead of rivals, Kopa and Kion could become complementary forces. Kopa, the future king, could lead with bravery and vision, while Kion ensures the circle of life is protected through the guard. Together, they could represent two halves of Simba himself, the reckless dreamer he once was, and the cautious leader he became. But apart from these two, there is another lion cub we must remember, Kiara. Their dynamic would complicate things even further. In the canon we know, Kiara grows up as Simba's sole heir, with Kion in a supportive role. But if Kopa existed, suddenly Kiara becomes the third child, with her path to the throne blocked by her older brother. So what would her role be in such a situation? What would her future hold? Would she fade into the background, or would her relationship with Kovu still rewrite everything? The sheer weight of these overlapping destinies makes one thing clear. If Kopa ever met the Lion Guard, the Pride Lands wouldn't be the same. What would happen would be a huge test for everyone, because three cubs of Simba mean three different visions of what legacy, leadership, and loyalty truly mean. So the real question is this: with Kopa in the picture, what happens to Simba's legacy? Would his family grow stronger, or repeat the same mistakes that tore him and Scar apart? As we've already mentioned, in the canon we know Kiara is Simba's heir. She grows up in Simba's pride, carrying the same burden her father once did, balancing responsibility with her own desire for freedom. Her story with Kovu isn't just a love story. It's about healing a kingdom broken by division and proving that the next ruler can embrace both tradition and change. But if Kopa were alive, everything would change. His existence would push Kiara out of the direct line of succession. Instead of preparing to be queen, she would live in the shadow of her older brother, just as Kion does in canon. That instantly reshapes her arc. Instead of being the child Simba protects too tightly because she's the only heir, she becomes the overlooked middle child. Still important, still royal, but no longer the center of Simba's legacy, and thus his attention. Think about what that would mean for Simba as a father. In Simba's pride, his protectiveness of Kiara is rooted in loss, the trauma of nearly dying as a cub, the scars left by his uncle's betrayal, and his fear of losing everything he fought for. If Kopa existed, that protectiveness could have even deeper roots. Imagine Simba already haunted by the pain of losing Kopa in Zira's attack. Would that make him even more controlling over Kiara, refusing to risk another child's life? Or would it have the opposite effect? Would he pour all his attention into Kopa, the heir, leaving Kiara even more neglected than Kion often feels in the Lion Guard? It's not hard to imagine Kiara resenting Kopa, just as Scar once resented Mufasa. History could repeat itself in tragic ways. At the same time, Kopa's survival would shift how Simba views Kion. In canon, Kion is the other son. Not the heir, but still entrusted with an extraordinary destiny. With Kopa in the mix, Kion could be seen as even further removed from succession. Instead of Simba balancing two children's futures, heir and guard leader, he'd be juggling three, each with a role pulling in different directions. And yet, maybe this is where Simba's true legacy lies. He knows better than anyone the cost of rivalry between brothers. He saw what happened when his own uncle turned against his father and when Scar turned against him. If Kopa met the Lion Guard, Simba would be forced to face that cycle head-on, ensuring his children didn't repeat the sins of their ancestors. But there's another player we can't ignore, because Kopa's fate has always been tied to one lioness, Zira. And if he lived long enough to meet the Lion Guard, her war with the Pride Lands would look very, very different. No discussion of Kopa's fate can avoid one name, Zira. In The Lion King 2: Simba's Pride, Zira is introduced as Scar's most loyal follower. Banished with her pride for refusing to accept Simba as king, she raises her cubs, Nuka, Vitani, and Kovu, in exile, training them to hate Simba and one day reclaim the Pride Lands. Her obsession with Scar and her hunger for revenge make her one of the most dangerous threats Simba's family ever faced. But if we look at The Lion King: Six New Adventures, Zira's shadow stretches even further back. In the story A Tale of Two Brothers, which explores Mufasa and Scar's youth, a character resembling Zira betrays the royal family and is linked to Kopa's disappearance. The details are debated, and Disney has never confirmed this connection as canon, but many fans interpret the event as Zira attacking Kopa, either fatally or in a way that forced Simba to hide the truth. If Kopa had lived, though, the entire conflict of Simba's pride would be rewritten. Imagine Zira trying to rally her Outlanders not against Simba's daughter, but against Simba's son, the rightful heir. Kopa's survival would make him her #1 target. Every attack, every ambush would be more personal. It wouldn't just be about Scar's legacy anymore. It would be about avenging her failure to destroy Simba's bloodline the first time. And then there's Kion and the Lion Guard. In canon, the Guard clashes with Zira's forces in episodes of the series, defending the Circle of Life against her attempts to destabilize the Pride Lands. If Kopa were part of the picture, those battles take on a heavier meaning. The Guard wouldn't just be protecting the kingdom. They'd be protecting Simba's heir, the symbol of everything Zira wants to annihilate. This also raises a darker question. What if Zira succeeded? What if her original attempt on Kopa's life failed, but she finally succeeded during the era of the Lion Guard? Simba's worst fear, history repeating itself, could come true. The Pride Lands could lose their heir again, sparking a war fiercer than the one we saw in Simba's pride. But there's another possibility. Kopa's survival could actually prevent Zira's war entirely. With 2 sons and an heir already secured, Simba might not see Kiara as the fragile key to his legacy. That could ease his paranoia and soften his rule, preventing Zira from gaining momentum. Perhaps the Pride Lands, with Kopa alive and the Guard at his side, would never fracture the way they did in Simba's pride. Either way, Zira's presence proves one thing. If Kopa ever met the Lion Guard, the stakes would be much higher, because Zira wouldn't stop until Simba's line was broken, and the Guard would fight to the last to protect it. As you can see, there are many possibilities, but that leaves one final question. Why didn't Disney ever let these stories overlap? Why didn't Kopa and the Lion Guard exist in the same universe? And what does that choice tell us about the way Disney protects the Lion King legacy?
Lion Guard, let's go!
At this point, it's natural to wonder, if Kopa's story adds so much drama, so much possibility, why didn't Disney ever bring him into canon? Why keep him confined to the pages of a forgotten book series? The answer comes down to how Disney manages its universes and its audiences. First, there's the question of canon. The 6 New Adventures books were officially licensed, but they weren't written by the filmmakers or integrated into the studio's long-term story plans. That makes them what fans often call secondary canon, real enough to exist, but not binding on the films. By the time Simba's Pride was released in 1998, Disney needed a clean narrative. Kiara became the heir, and the books were quietly left behind. Then there's the audience factor. The Lion Guard was made for Disney Junior, targeted at preschoolers and early grade school kids. Its goal was to introduce the Lion King world to a new generation. Including Kopa, a character tied to obscure lore and a debated death, would have complicated that mission. For parents and kids watching the Lion Guard, Kiara and Kion were simple and clear. One heir, one protector. Adding a lost son with a controversial backstory would only raise questions the series didn't want to answer. Finally, there's the matter of legacy. The Lion King is one of Disney's most carefully protected properties. Every sequel, spin-off, or adaptation is designed to fit together neatly. Bringing Kopa into the Lion Guard would have meant rewriting parts of Simba's pride, or at least reinterpreting them. And Disney wasn't willing to fracture its own canon to include a character most casual fans had never heard of. So instead, Kopa was left in the shadows. The books remain beloved by diehard fans, but the films and shows move forward without him. It's a choice that frustrates some, but it's also what gives us the freedom to imagine. Because if Kopa were canon, there would only be one story. Instead, by being absent, he becomes infinite possibilities. Now tell me, what do you think would have happened if Simba's lost son returned to meet the Lion Guard? Would it unite the Pride Lands or break them apart? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed diving deep into this what if, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to our channel. By clicking the bell, you'll join a community of movie lovers who explore not just the stories Disney told us, but the ones they never did as well. Until next time.